said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy... Flyover State of Fear. Welcome to back to Flyover State of Fear. You got Brian, you got me. How is everyone doing tonight? You okay, Brian? Oh no!
Hi, Joe.
Oh no!
I came for a visit. Today's a special day.
It's a lot cleaner.
I thought maybe I could join you for the whole show. I'm going to be here the whole time.
You could absolutely join us, Billy.
Yeah.
I think I knew
This was
you
a Christmas present for my son. He absolutely had to have it one year when he was little, and it was creepy.
Well, your son's a little horror kid. I mean, like that's. Did he even?
But he was a Goosebumps. He was a Goosebumps kid, so I think it stemmed from that. But he did legitimately do a ventriloquism act for his school talent show when he was like in second or third grade.
Oh, that's great.
He did make it. He legitimately made it work.
Did he was able to throw his voice?
I mean, as much as a child ever could, you know.
That's still great, though. I mean, of all the dummies, it's not that creepy of a dummy.
No, it's a cuter dummy.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's Danny O'Day. He's a famous dummy, like Howdy Doody.
Gotcha.
He's like a replica of a famous dummy. I don't remember the guy who was the ventriloquist. But I will say this movie, and we can talk about just this, we're going to get into Dead Silence. But I did want to say that the opening credit sequence, and then generally, I'm convinced, the next Batman villain, the Matt Reeves Batman 2, should be the ventriloquist in Scarface from,
what I'm
talking about, where he's got the little puppet gangster, but clearly the ventriloquist is the guy who masterminds everything. Yeah, he's in the animated series, but I actually think it's a cool, weird character that you could make work. He's got a gun. He's still a guy with a gun. He's just as dangerous as any other psycho in the fucking Batman universe.
And all those Batman movies, they've all been about illusions anyway of grandeur. So it's not
right. And you can't do Matt Reeves has already made a way too realistic of a universe for you to do something like Mr. Freeze or Clayface.
We said he's doing Clayface.
I know. I heard two things. I heard he was doing Clayface, but I also heard that somebody wanted to make a standalone Clayface movie.
Just give us fucking movies. Just that, at that point. But yeah, Victor.
Right, Danny, thanks for joining us, bud.
He'll show up later. I like we were gonna, talk about how we're doing and what we're watching. You do mention the intro credits of Dead Silence, and actually I love any creation.
Well, and I mean, I don't know. Again, we're kind of building ahead because we're almost ready to start talking about the movie already. But I think when we do get into it, we're gonna notice there's a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street built into this
so
movie.
Much,
and I think it starts out with the creation.
Yeah,
I think that's very Nightmare.
Glove.
You know what I mean? That's the right off the bat, they're kind of giving you the vibe of what you're in for.
You know what? There is. So I'll pause it there because it's Nightmare. It's female Nightmare on Elm Street, basically. We always like to jump off when we start these episodes, though, without kind of, just us. Anything you've been watching? I know you've been ripping through a decent amount of horror.
We were off mic, we'll talk about what we watched. And I was like, I don't even know if I've watched much horror. And then my last 5 now watchings, all horror stuff. Me and Harrison on Easter, we watched Night of the Lepus, which is like a proto Jaws with rabbits. With rabbits, giant rabbits, and basically the way they make giant rabbits in this movie is they have real rabbits in miniatures, so everything's kind of adorable when it's supposed to be scary. It was good, a lot of fun. That's a fun one. I watched Knock at the Cabin on Peacock.
Oh, yes, we
streaming
were supposed
now.
To watch that the same night together, and I did not watch it. It's good.
It's okay. It was all right. It was fine. It was a fine M Night movie. I think it was a little bit better than Old, in my personal opinion. Um, but
Old was
Dave,
shitty.
like again, another knocking out of the park. Like showcase for Batista. Well worth it to watch just to give him. He gets a leading role and he's great. He kills it. So good.
I absolutely hated Old, which that movie had no redeeming qualities in my opinion.
I mean, there was some fun stuff during as far as I was concerned, during the like getting old on the beach part, but like everything else about it.
It was I mean, like, I know this is the shit on Old podcast, but like, it was filmed in such a way where it's like you think they thought they were doing something different, but really it was just being annoying.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm not an M Night hater, so I will watch Knock. Yeah, I've been personally slacking in my horror realm. Not even any like little TV shows here or there. No. So nah.
I have one more. I did a rewatch of a movie from 2008 called Splinter, and it's kind of a low budge horror, body horror, like infection movie. It's got oh crap, the guy's name escapes me. He's got one of those like kind of memorable names, but until you hear it, you can't remember it. But he was in Kong Skull Island. He's the guy who gets smacked into the mountain in Kong Skull Island. And
I know
he was in like Agent Carter and stuff. But anyway, he's in it. And
Wiggum?
Yeah, Shea Wigham.
Not the guy from Road Trip, right?
The guy from Road Trip is also in it, which is funny because I literally just watched Road Trip for the first time in like 20 years this week also, and then watched Splinter and was like, oh my god, this guy, I like hit the stride of this guy's whole career. Like,
this guy's in everything.
Splinter's really good, and it was on like let me see, I streamed it. It was streaming a bunch of places actually. I ended up watching it on Hulu, but it was for free a bunch of different places. It's from 2008. It's a blast. So it's one that was so good. I hadn't watched it like since around the time it came out probably. And I rewatched it, and I put the Blu-ray on my Amazon list. I was like, I would like to own this, please.
Good. I'm glad. I always like when we get to own something. No, you know what? That's not true. I said I haven't watched anything. I watched my Blu-ray of The Dentist like a week ago.
Oh, nice. Is that the 2-pack? It came with both of them, right?
Yeah, it's the Vestron. And I was just looking for some dirty horror, because that's what that is. And that's exactly just unnerving, dirty, open mouth horror
nasty.
Starring
just grim.
The dad from Psych. But yeah, I only watched the first one of that, and then I don't know. I was talking. Not watched, but I had a long conversation with someone the other week about the Candymans, and it was the same conversation me and you always have of like, oh, the second one's better than you'd like. That one's growing on me. Like, it's just a slasher. Third one's basically a Skinamax movie without actually any like nudity or porno, but it has that feel to it.
That kind of sheen of like a made-for-TV movie, like but it also like very much feels like a throwback to the horror sequels. It's funny you don't think about like the Candymans came much later than the Freddys and the Jasons, but it feels like a throwback to the sequels of those, to like the later Freddys.
Kinda.
Like, oh, you just kind of slapped one together here, huh?
Tony Todd showed up. It was a TV movie or made for video. So I did have a good conversation with someone about those, but that's not to watch. But today we are talking about Dead Silence, 2007's Dead Silence. This is James Wan and Lee Winnell's quasi final follow up to Saw. I only say quasi follow up because it was all kind of made around the same time.
Yeah, I was trying to get the timeline down, and I didn't do my IMDb research like I should have. But like they obviously do Saw together. At first, I thought this came out between Saw and Saw 2, but it comes out after Saw 2.
Comes out after
but
Saw 2.
Before Saw 3, right?
I believe so, yeah, because it's 2007, and that's like 2003
and Lee Winnell's he's a producer on, but he's only a writer on the first one, or
of the Saws. I'm not 100%. I believe you're right. I don't think he ever wrote Saw 2. It's like
I think he just like kind of stayed on as a producer, but I don't necessarily think. And James Wan directed the first 3, right?
Of Saws, that
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll go to his wiki right now.
Terrible. We're terrible.
We're
at
not
researching.
well prepared. No, we are prepared.
Wildly unprepared, I would say.
Saw. No, he directs the first Saw.
Okay.
And then writes the story for Saw 3. And his name does not pop up for some reason on Saw 2. So James Wan's second directorial movie is Dead Silence. Or third.
Okay, so but Lee Wanell does stay on to write the first 3.
Let's go to Lee's. Let's go to
I'm looking at just the Saw IMDb. And that's why that first 3 movies feel like a real trilogy.
Yeah, he writes the first 3, and him and Wan are just involved in those.
Right, Wan moved. They're directed by that Darren Lynn Bousman. The first couple, the 2 and 3, and then it looks like James Wan just produces.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what he was doing director-wise between Saw and this. Did he do anything else?
So that's what's interesting. So he does. I'm still on leaving else. He does this movie in same 2007. James Wan has 2 movies come out. One of his is not a horror movie. It's called Death Sentence, and it's like
that's the Kevin Bacon movie
with Kevin Bacon.
That's the movie, the James Wan movie that came out in 2007 that I watched.
Yes.
Not this one.
I saw the other one, the Dead Silence. So he's 2 Death Sentence and Dead Silence both come out.
It's funny, they both have the same Metacritic score basically on IMDb, but I would consider Death Sentence to be considerably better than
I mean, it's like Taken or like Death Sentence. I mean, it's just a family revenge.
Death Sentence, I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but it's based on the actual sequel to Death Wish.
Oh.
And it's more like the original Death Wishes, where it turns out revenge is not the answer. That's how the first Death Wish goes, and then the sequels are all like boomer revenge porn shit about shooting minorities. But like the first one has the right message of like violence begets violence, and that's not the answer, and revenge is the answer, and that's what Death Sentence is about. It's like Kevin Bacon's a guy who experiences a tragedy, and he tries to get revenge, and thinks it spirals out till his whole life is blowing up.
Gotcha.
And it's good. I mean, I guess I say it's good. I probably haven't seen it in about the same amount of time as so it's probably it's very James Wan. It's probably very 2007, but I remember it at least like carrying the message pretty well.
Yeah. I haven't revisited that one. I remember my friends saw it and were obsessed with it at that time. But so that's the timeline of James Wan. If you're thinking about like Saw's already a thing, a couple years had passed, but he's just been involved in producing and other things, and they're hired by a studio basically to, hey, we need another. The way I always heard Dead Silence was, hey, we need another horror movie. And they were like, all right, we kind of got this idea. So they went and they made this movie, and it was had a lot of studio involvement, and a script doctor came to it. So like Lee Winnell publicly has shit on Dead Silence, and even when he used to run a blog in like 2011, wrote an open letter of like, fuck that, basically fuck this movie. They kind of credit now with like, these are the lessons I learned to not do when working with the studio, and like, and they kind of, both of them kind of like credit this movie for helping them have better movies in the future. So,
I can see that. This is like, but you have a director with a very successful first feature, and then they move to a bigger second feature with more studio input. I don't want to say, but it sounds a little Kevin Smith-esque.
Yeah, it's a little. So that's like
and he realizes maybe that's not for him, and he needs to go separate.
I mean, and then that's more Lee Winnell who's outspoken. Like, I mean, James Wan went to go make Fast and the Furious.
And he did all the Insidious movies, right?
Insidious,
and that's him, right?
Yeah, Conjuring, and recently Malignant, and Malignant feels more like a back to form of a Dead Silence.
Malignant feels like that's what I was gonna say. This feels like the precursor to Malignant more than anything.
Kind of weird, a little step cousin-y. But so so that's where this movie like stands, and like, and it's truly like one of these forgotten mid 2000 schlock horror films. Like I was reading some articles today where
I
they,
wanted to get your perspective on this a little bit because it's different for you because this was like the era you were growing up in
yeah,
horror, and I
I remember
consider
them all.
not just for horror but for movies in general this era of like post like from 2003 to like 2010 to be a pretty dark era for movies. Just not great. Just like kind of a little bit grim.
For me, they're all like the memory of that is like they are few and far between. I don't even think you have nostalgia goggles for them. Like I like some of them, and you're a lot into the torture porn, so it's kind of what all you were offered. And when I was kind of reading about this today too, is like a lot of people speculate, oh, this movie might have been more of a hit and better 3 years later. Like it's more of a ghost tale. It's more of this, and people didn't give a shit about these ghost tales or like
Yeah, that's
horror
true. It kind
movies
of
of
wasn't
this ilk.
the thing that was going on in
But for
movies at the
me,
time. Although, when the Ring come out? What's the Ring?
the Ring, but that's like J horror, which I feel like was treated differently. The Ring comes out in 2001, 2002
Oh,
ish.
okay, that's true. So this is 2007, so it's been a minute,
This
which is good because they rip off the opening scare with the girl's reveal onto the sheet. I was like, this is just the Ring. She's even making the same face.
uh, all those faces. But for me personally, this era of
Everybody's all,
horror, like the I that was one of the better effects of this tongue out.
yeah.
But for me, firstly, get this era of kind of growing up and like middle ish, early high school, more middle school. It was though. You remember every single horror movie coming out. The trailer is always good, and most of the times they were all duds. Like I feel like even though it's not the same, it's like this. Stay Alive, the video game one about Elizabeth Shaw, I think her name is. Not Mary Shaw. Stay Alive. For some reason, like uh, Michael Keaton's White Noise comes to mind. You know, the Mothman prophecies.
Is this the same year? Is this the same year as Paranormal Activity? Is 2007 the first?
No.
Paranormal Activity is later, right?
I don't know, 2009,
2010, okay.
10, because, and that's release year, right? We're not like, because I know that Paranormal Activity was floating around, but Paranormal Activity, yeah, Paranormal Activity is like actually, you're right.
2007. For some reason I thought so. So like we're actually looking at a shift again to another, but
right.
Not into this. This is still outside of what people wanted. Like we're actually at a crossroad. We're probably like just kind of coming out of torture porn era and into like the ghost stuff. But like it just wasn't. This just didn't hit right. This needed to come out. I'll tell you when this movie should have come out was when like 13 Ghosts and House on Haunted Hill and The Haunting.
The late 90s.
The late 90s, early, yeah. Kind of this should have been before Saw.
And with the big mess of a mistake of this movie, not mess, I find, and we'll get to the normal stuff, is it because of James Wan and everything. You could tell the studio was like, well, we got to edit it and score it, and to basically want it to feel like a Saw movie, and it doesn't lend itself to like the end reveal when they show the big twist at the end, and
sure,
it's just a Saw recap.
Yeah, the cuts are very Saw-like. Yeah, the editing is very. Now I watched the Blu-ray. I bought the Blu-ray, and then of course Shout Factory announced they were doing a 4K, and I was like, I think I'm good with a $10 Blu-ray on this one.
I did the same thing. I
don't think I need to upgrade that, but it is the unrated cut, so I don't know if that's closer to what James Wan and Lee Wanell wanted originally, or what stayed or what went. In my experience, it's mostly just seconds of gore in most unrated cuts.
I think for this one, it's seconds of gore. I don't think this is like our vision. From what I could read and everything, the original, their script, not even cut, was like a lot more interesting in the sense of like Mary Shaw was actually a victim of like spousal abuse, and her puppets were like her out, and that is the reasoning why she actually does some hauntings, and that's what they originally wrote. And then it's just not what the studio people wanted.
Yeah.
So I read and I didn't see it. Apparently, the alternate ending does show more of something like that, but we'll just say we both watched the Blu-ray versions, but I see no difference in the unrated. I'm sure it's a couple gore scenes, maybe a jump scare.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say about it, but as we normally do, I'm going to read the synopsis here, and I have not read it yet, as we always do. Let's see if it's accurate. After his wife meets a grisly end, Jamie Ashen returns to their creepy hometown of Ravensfair to unravel the mystery of her murder. Once there, he discovers a legend of Mary Shaw, a murdered ventriloquist whose eerie presence still looms over the town as he desperately digs for answers. Jamie encounters the curse that took his wife's life and threatens his own. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we start the movie like this pregnant couple, they get they receive a mysterious box, and it has a ventriloquist dummy in it. Also named Billy, which I guess Juan and Lee know where like all the dolls are named Billy because that's
there is a Billy doll later in the movie too when they reveal the big
he's there.
He's there. He's like not in the case, but he's kind of like on the ground.
Saw puppet.
Yeah, everybody's favorite Saw puppet. Looking like Kermit the Frog coming riding on that tricycle with his weird little puppet legs.
Especially in that first one. Go back and watch that first Saw. Like the puppet is clearly not supposed to be any sort of iconography for them.
No.
It's just one of another creepy things.
Yeah.
Although James Wan's Twitter handle was creepy puppet, so like that's his calling card. It's why Annabelle looks like Annabelle, even though the actual Raggedy Ann doll is scarier than the demonic looking one, in my opinion. But they have that puppet comes, and I mean, it wastes no time, which is nice. Just straight up puppet in it with a sheet murders the wife, like you said earlier, murders the wife and the baby, like you said earlier.
Oh yeah, she's supposed to be pregnant, right?
Yeah, she's very pregnant. I mean, in the eyes of the movie, she's very pregnant.
Which means she's a 90-pound woman with a tiny belly.
Oh my god, it's so funny when they're just like twigs, and it's like it's not a beach ball.
Yeah, no, this is totally a real belly. Don't worry about that. Now, I was wondering, did you, in anything in your reading about this movie, did it say that this takes place in an alternate universe where the world is blue? Everything is so
that's just 2000.
Blue.
That's mid 2000s.
Everything is so blue in this movie. It's insane. This
could have been a J horror movie for how blue it was, because that's like that tone, right?
Blue. It's more blue than The Grudge is green. It's way more blue than that. It's more blue than The Matrix is green. Like
it's very blue.
Blue. The only thing that's not blue in the whole movie is the kid's car.
Well, everyone drives vintage cars.
Yeah, of course. Obviously.
One of the things that the kid, though, they say, talks to his wife, though, is she does mention, or reminds me of this poem called for Mary Shaw, and she kind of starts reciting some of it, but it's interesting to find out that like the boy's hometown is based on it and not hers, and that's just,
like they've never talked about this before, even though like he clearly grew up amidst this horror, like this thing has a grip on his whole town. Like
the town makes no sense to me, but
well, first of all, it's a Silent Hill ass town with like a bunch of fog and fake digital matte painting backgrounds that look like shit. It looks like a real matte painting. The matte painting at the end of Terminator looks better than that.
Well, also the town like was bustling at one point, but you also like have to take a boat to get to their big theater house.
Yeah, they built their theater house out on an island. That seems like a bad idea. Although it does make for a great place to have a horror climax. A weird rundown swamp theater is a great place to have your horror climax.
That was only
clearly worked backwards from that idea.
And it was only built to showcase a ventriloquist woman and no one else. when she went
Well, I
down.
mean, I get the impression they probably use it for other things too.
She's a big get.
It's just the Mary Shaw Theater.
So, fucking. So, it is. So we do get that. And there's a poem to go with it. Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She has no children, only dolls. And if you see her in your dreams, be sure you never ever scream. And that is your Freddy's 1-2 is coming for you.
Yep.
Nursery rhyme.
How do you feel about the screaming thing as far as the sleeping? Like, it's kind of unfair. Like, it's harder to control your screams. Those are pretty involuntary. I also think I forget about it. I watched this movie twice, and I definitely
Okay.
at both times totally forgot about the don't scream thing until like in the third act where it becomes a thing again, where like it actually like comes into play.
I think the rules are really loose and fast with it, and she's not a fair killer. Like that's the point of it. But yeah, they forget about the screaming part and really all of it.
I guess I don't mind that it's weird and silly and that they have their own lore. I just feel like it's a thing where they don't seed it enough that by the time they meet it to mean something at the end, I forgot all about it. I was like, oh yeah.
The protagonist.
I was like, wow, I just figured she got them. I didn't realize that it was supposed to be she got them because they screamed. You know what I mean? There comes a point where like somebody
I just thought she got them too.
I just thought she got them. Like, yeah, I didn't realize that she got them. She like tracked them like the thing from The Quiet Place.
Yeah, the protagonist of that too. Also, of speaking of getting them, is the biggest knock of this thing is he's so boring.
Oh, like, yeah, it should have just been Donnie Wahlberg. Like, Donnie Wahlberg is back as the scummy cop from Saw 2.
Donnie Wahlberg, why on earth is he just shaving all the time?
I know we haven't got to that point, but obviously it's a horror movie, so we all know he's gonna die. I love that when he dies, the shaver drops, like it's like his little signature thing drops on the ground. It's so stupid.
So we could go right to Donnie Wahlberg. So the guy's name is Jamie, and Jamie's wife does die.
Yeah.
And
Donnie Wahlberg's the cop investigating it, and obviously everybody thinks Jamie did it because,
he's like, don't go anywhere. Seems to go back.
He immediately leaves town.
The other part that was really humorous to me with that too is he goes back to his hometown to bury his dead wife who didn't grow up there.
Isn't from there. Didn't even know he was from there. Didn't know that if she was from there, she would have remembered the rhyme better.
Yeah, and like just because they have to be in that town. That's the only reason why.
Because the whole thing is about getting back to the really sound stage where they all live.
Because really the only other people we meet along the way, I shouldn't say only, two of the more main people is the mortician and the mortician's mentally unstable wife. And the mortician
very sensitive portrayal of dementia, and that's one.
It came off across. At least they loved each other, and he goes to him, and the mortician's like, "Ha when the cops are done with it, then we'll get the body." And it's like, okay. And then I was like, "Is this the burial going to happen?" Because did you talk to the girl's family? And he's like, "Not really."
Yeah, like she just like doesn't have a family. They just brush that off.
Yeah, I assumed that the parents were stunned, and they're like, but anyway, they have the burial in the creepiest cemetery of all time, and
like a Tim Burton cemetery.
Yeah, and the mortician's wife, Marianne, comes running up. Marianne,
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Comes running up and starts spouting off some crazy nonsense about Mary Shaw, and you got to bury Billy the puppet. And he's like, huh? And then the camera pans, and you see it's the tomb of Mary Shaw. And you're like, oh shit, she's real. She's in this world. And he's kind of also been starting, I think, at this point too, having like nightmares about Mary Shaw.
They have a great scene that's lifted directly from Seinfeld with like him in bed,
The red
afraid
light.
of the puppet running around and the red light and everything. I was like, wow, they really went all in on the Seinfeld references in this episode. All he needs to be is like, Mr. Marbles.
And we do at this time also meet his sickly father and he's clearly came from like a loaded family because it's his big mansion, and his father's new wife is like essentially like his age, like maybe 30. She is the Allegra Call. She's the like the pretty woman from Hitch, the successful pretty girl at Hitch. And I think a few other things, but I was like, oh, I recognize you're Kevin James.
I think wasn't she a Victoria's Secret model or something?
I'm sure.
She became. Anyway, I got to shout out Bob Gunton, fucking the Shawshank. He's the warden in Shawshank.
Yeah.
He's the police chief in Demolition Man. I just love Bob Gunton so much. I love that, like, even first time watch, like, you don't gotta be a sleuth to be like, something's going on with Bob Gunton.
No, they're not playing it.
They're like, he had a stroke. I'm like, he is purple.
They didn't hide it very well. Especially watching it, knowing that ending twist. You're like, oh yeah, he's a puppet.
He's super puppet.
But
also, I love. Okay, since we're jumping into the puppet thing, we have to. I have to talk about when they reveal it. We already talked about the Saw style reveal of her working what is essentially a wooden rod with like a couple of little like knobs on it. I'm like, that controls his whole facial muscles and his eyes. He makes expressions. Like, how you doing that by turning a wooden stick in his neck?
So, because Mary Shaw is a veteran ventriloquist.
Let's save. There's so many reveals. We already spoiled one. Let's save the final one.
My question is, why the fuck was she going this far to get this guy, this kid, the son of the?
If the puppet can just murder the wife, like that, why did we have to lure the son back to the house and do an elaborate cat and mouse thing where he almost, he buries Billy and.
Unlike Freddy Krueger, and that is the comparison we're.
We can. Yeah, absolutely.
There's really no there's no like she's feeding off her fear. You go stronger. Like there's no purpose behind this other than.
I mean, technically, she's doing the Freddy Krueger thing. She's getting revenge because
she's getting revenge.
We get the supposed Mary Shaw backstory, and I love the story that he gives them originally. Is that this whole curse is because they heckled her, like a kid heckled her, and she went on a murderous rampage and started killing all the kids, and then became like this vengeful spirit, and
then disappeared.
Right, and then of course you find out that no, the town Freddy Kruegered her. That's why. Now, granted, she clearly was doing murder. She was much like Freddy. She was doing horrific murders, but she wasn't just a person who got heckled over the edge.
No,
she got murdered.
she got murdered, so she came back, and I love also how this. In this world of movie too, because the mortician is very aware of, he's the one who gives us that first backstory of like.
If this is a Final Destination movie, he's Tony Todd, the mortician,
and she was like, oh well, my father. She died, and my father took care of her. Her final wish, because that's what morticians do. We put their final wishes in.
Yeah,
this is like, I made her a dummy as well, and it falls in front of him, and that's just creepy. Like, there's creepy scenes in this movie. Like, I think.
Oh no, definitely. When we get into the final act, there's a couple visuals that I want to point out that I think are excellent.
The one comp I know this movie's fun to goof about too, like when we're doing, but is like I think this is probably a perfect Halloween time, like spooky season, fall time, like throwaway watch is a wrong term for it, but like hey, I'm looking for something that's not too offensive, but we could all sit down and have a good scare too.
Yeah, this is a movie that is not great, but it is not offensively bad. It is not like gonna ruin your evening with how bad it is.
No, I don't think it would ever. Cause what I found trying to do readings. A lot of people
like when I said 13 Ghosts and House on Haunted Hill. If you were having a night where you're watching that level of movies, this one you could slot this bad boy right in.
Right in. He's a step above the 13 Ghosts. And
13 Ghosts had a really good DVD special feature.
Oh, you've told me that.
It's better than the movie.
The bio, not bio, but yeah.
Told you about all the ghosts. Yeah. It was so cool. I was like, this should have been in the movie. You should have cut out that annoying little kid and put this in instead.
No, Shaloub had a Shaloub in that movie.
F. Murray Abraham is in that movie. Oscar winner F. Murray Abraham.
But just like that movie, this movie, very smallly, but they exist on the internet, a lot of like in defense of Dead Silence articles.
Oh, sure. And you can find a niche fan base for anything.
And a lot of them are more so this villain, this story and villain are much cooler than the movie presents itself. And I got to agree with that because I think one of my notes in this is I think this movie would have worked so much better if we just let's scrap our like main characters and everything, but keep the bones and the backstory. What if it was a tale about restoring the theater?
Okay, do it like a Phantom of the Opera almost kind of thing.
But it's like but it's still the same horror and everything, and the town's depressed. But it's like, hey, I want to revive this theater. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, out-of-towners come in so that you have an excuse to explain the whole backstory to somebody and stuff. Mm-hmm. New people buy the theater; they're going to gentrify the theater.
Yes, I think it works. Keeping almost like I said, exactly the same. Works the same because there's some creepy shit in there. But anyway, but that is a lot of this movie, except going like really beat for beat through it as we normally would.
Well, you don't really need to because the set we talked about the beginning. Yeah. She dies, he comes home to his hometown. He's got a strained relationship with his dad, and the middle of the movie is just a lot of like going around and like finding out things. Facts and then like talking to the mortician and then talking to someone else. At one point to bury the doll like she tells him.
And it comes back and then like it's actually like you said, the Donnie Wahlberg is like he's the best part when he comes on screen. When he comes back, he's like, all right, and he takes the fucking doll with him. Because he's like, well, I'm gonna take this. I hope you don't mind. Because like, don't do it. And it's like it's such a wet blanket of a character. That's my point of that.
The lead in this is just a real nothing. And it should have just been Donnie Wahlberg sleazy, and then you wouldn't have had to worry. You could have ended your movie with the main character dying. You wouldn't have had to have anybody live.
Well, you know what I mean? No one lived. That's the best thing of this movie is there's only one person who lives.
Yeah.
Everyone dies.
Oh, that's true. I guess she does get the main character in the end too, doesn't she? I forgot about that. But yeah, see, you didn't need him at all. No, you could have just had that be Donnie Wahlberg.
It's a straight up, like, it's a vehicle just to watch these people die. And
from the beginning, you have all three of them die. You have the husband, daughter, or the husband, wife, and unborn baby all killed. Donnie Wahlberg's a cop. He has to go. He's going to talk to the family and try to investigate what happened with why these people were murdered. So that leads him to the hometown to look
more like
for
a Wicker Man scenario.
Yeah, it leads him into now he's in this weird town and he's like
the town. But once again, the boats we got to take to the theater. But yeah, and I mean that ending. We get to the ending climax. Where Donnie,
He investigates around a little bit, and then eventually he has to go to the theater, and everything happens at the theater. It's like, why didn't we just go here in the first place?
It is a lot of fluffer. Like you just kind of found out everything I own. Like it's just more facts, right? Okay, $101 she has that she was buried with. That only comes in back at the end because it's like, oh, they've all been dug up, and it's just something that a character tells you off screen.
Yeah. And then it is cool when they reveal the wall of dolls.
Oh, looks great.
That's great, and I like when all the dolls start turning their head, except it takes too long. Like, you didn't need to show all the dolls doing it.
They showed all the dolls.
Every single doll. Creak.
And they're all, and like she kind of has this monologue with it where she's like, you know, I experimented with everything, revealing that like some of these puppets were used from the remains of the people or children I've murdered along the way.
Yeah, you get the impression, well, especially with the reveal of Bob Gunton and stuff at the end, she's clearly been working with like human tissue and stuff. And then you have the reveal of the like full on corpse Pinocchio, which I was like, okay, that goes pretty hard. That's pretty great.
It rules.
Like it's all strung up creepily. It's like half decayed and rotted. That's pretty rad. I like how that.
Jamie, the lead, is quippy with that too, because he's not like, oh fuck, we got to get out of here. This is the Mary Shaw. Like I told you, he's like,
yeah,
I think we just solved a 70-year-old murder. And like Donnie Wahlberg's like, I didn't sign up for this. Like that.
Donnie Wahlberg's the cop who's like actually seen shit in his life. He's like, nah, man, I'm cashing in.
And then he just starts just one-handing shotgunning the dummies, and they're like, she's going from dummy to dummy.
Right. You find one of Mary Shaw's powers, again, ill-defined abilities that Mary Shaw has, but apparently she can jump. That's why she brought up the 100 dolls. She can jump between the bodies of all the dolls.
It is funny. The one thing I read about that and like Lee Winnell was like the script doctor shit, like how he hated it. But part of it, they were like, well, can you like give us reasons or like define why, you know, some of these things are happening? And I guess they didn't wrote that because, you know, scary is just scary, and it probably would have worked more solid. But trying to answer some of those things according to it muddied up the movie more and more, because you're right, her powers, okay, so she's living in da-da-da, but she's also like living somewhere else, and
well, she's controlling all the puppets, but does that mean they also can work independently of themselves, or can she only do one at a time?
And
not really. She used to be jumping from body to body, but does that mean that she was controlling Billy when he was all the way in the city with them? Where was she
in the USPS system? Like,
yeah.
So,
but again, it's not a big deal, honestly. Like I said,
it's a fun scare.
Yeah, it's a fun scare, and I like the jumping around, him shotgunning all the.
I personally think our movies have too many answers sometimes.
I actually had that complaint, or I was like starting to complain about that. I can't remember what movie it was I was watching, and I kind of started to be like, "Oh, I wish they would explain." And then immediately it was like, "Oh no, actually, that would have sucked." I'm really glad they didn't do that. Actually,
I don't think like, especially our supernatural shit needs explanation. But you know, there's a big thing, and then really the most effective part of the movie is the clown ventriloquist dummy that she's initially using, Mary Shaw's using to communicate to Jamie through it. And this is where we do find out, like, using the bodies for this, and it's like, come closer, and you know, it's creepy.
Well, and then we get what I think is, again, along with the child corpse puppet, the other gnarly reveal of a cool idea, clearly a thing that they had as an idea, is that she's like, you basically made a super long tongue out of all the tongues of the like corpses that she's, the people she's killed, and she always takes the tongue, and then she's got this like almost huge like boa constrictor coming out of her mouth made up of all these little tongue all the time. I was like, oh, that's a pretty fucked up image. That's some real Lovecraft shit there.
And it's a choice too, right? Like,
yeah. Absolutely. Well, because she's a ghost, so she doesn't have to have that.
But she's doing something with the tongues, which is fun.
It's part of her aesthetic. Well, she's really leaned into the ventriloquist ghost, and part of that is tongue and mouth control, and she's all about it.
And so then that all happens.
And to be fair, they do some ventriloquist stuff in here. They do some voice throwing, some mimicry. They do work in a little ventriloquism.
Well, I think that's all that happens throughout, right? Like, the mortician, you know, she mimics his voice to get Jamie to come.
He does the wife. They do the wife at the beginning.
And the wife at the beginning, and like, no, I took it as if she kills you, you're getting your voice, like she can use your voice to mimic because
sure, it's
even
Terminator rules. You know what I mean? Once she gets you, she can.
She calls up she calls up Jamie when he has his final confrontation with Donnie Wahlberg, and he's like, no, I gotta go to the theater because he has proof. And it's like a ratty phone call, and it's real deceptive. And as an audience, we know he's just been murdered. But then I think I just underdid my rule because that Miriam, the ventriloquist, the guy's wife, the mortician's wife, doesn't die actually, but she uses her voice to get the mortician in the morgue, which I found really funny because you think she would die, but really we learn that she's the only one that lived, and it's because she never actually probably had any interaction with Mary Shaw.
Sure.
It did also make me chuckle, speaking of the mortician, him using that old-timey camera, and in the flashback, his dad was using the same camera.
Yeah.
I liked one scene where, like, Jamie confronts him about all this ventriloquist shit and these murders, and he's like, why did you take these photos? And the guy's just like, it's part of my job.
Yeah.
No, they're murder. You're mutilating the corpses, man.
I didn't find that to be a very viable explanation either.
No, it was the one that made me chuckle because the British was the most, like, to me, except for Donnie Wahlberg, trying to be like grounded person in the movie who was like, we respect the rules of what's going on here. I wonder what the rest of the town thinks. Who's like, I don't know, we just moved.
Well, the town does have a real abandoned, a real Flint, Michigan style vibe to it. It's like he's driving through. It looks pretty run down. So yeah, he has his big confrontation with Mary Shaw, and he shoots up all the puppets, and he thinks he blows up Billy, and he thinks they're all done, right? He thinks all the puppets are gone, and then he goes upstairs to find his dad. Is that where we're at, right?
Yeah, I mean, Donnie Wahlberg gets thrown, like,
Donnie Wahlberg falls and he screams.
Dies.
Where the scream thing comes back,
and
because he falls, and as he falls, he screams, and then like she comes in as like a black ghost mist and like sweeps him out.
It's a really weird looking death. Because it's so like in the air and then off screen, and he falls.
Yeah.
And then after that, the Jamie like destroys them all kind of and like gets away. And he goes back to his dad to have that.
He thinks that because there's no more dolls, that she won't be able to.
Yeah.
He's broken the spell with no dolls to go into.
But we go back to then to his father's mansion, and that's where we have the Saw style reveal of you've been
Bob
the whole time.
Denton has been a puppet this whole
even,
time.
Showing like the food's falling out of his back and.
Yeah.
And
that effect is cool though. I like the way it was done and everything. It was fun. I remember the first time I saw this and I saw that reveal. I was like, "Oh hell no, Bob Gun's a puppet."
It kind of works.
It's really silly, but it does work. I think, and I think it's kind of like when we talked about Killer Clowns on Flyover. To be fair, I don't think I've watched your Fear episode, so you might have covered it there too. But we talk about how like commitment to the bit matters. If you're gonna go out of your way to make your movie about a ventriloquist killer, then you better have some ventriloquist shit in here.
Mm-hmm. And it's all ventriloquist shit.
Yeah. And I think they did a good job with that. And then, like I said, we find out the big reveal of, because he's been looking through her, and he had the notebook, the Mary Shaw notebook, and about making the perfect puppet. And we find out the stepmom, the wife, has been a puppet
Mary
this
Shaw.
whole time. Yeah,
she's Mary Shaw.
She's the real Mary Shaw, like in a perfect puppet body, like a human-looking puppet body.
And that's been the vessel in that, but the motive still makes no sense. But then she kills Jamie, and it was all for nothing. And we never got a sequel.
Yeah, no sequel. Although I think Mary Shaw would have been a cool villain to keep going, but you got to have a stronger movie out of the gate if you want your villain to. She was played by a lady who I only ever saw in one other thing. She's in Orange Is the New Black. She's part of like the scary old lady gang in Orange Is the New Black, and she's got a couple of really good scenes in that. But she's great as Mary Shaw. She was a very, very cool look, very good look.
Judith Roberts.
Yeah.
One of the Golden Girls. In Netflix's Orange is the New Black.
Right.
No, I'm reading it going, that's not right. Yeah.
She's not one of those Golden Girls.
She looked great. It's funny, because we pulled up her IMDb. Same year she was in that death sentence movie, and her name was Judge Shaw. But no, it's a really, like we said, fun, like, little horror movie that has.
It's a breezy 90 minutes, like you're not killing yourself watching this one.
Yeah, it has nothing, it has as much going for it as it kind of needs, but yeah, we could have benefited from her having having more Mary Shaw. And it's a creepy enough story.
Yeah, and like I said, there's some things you could have done to improve it. Like it, unfortunately, it's a product of its time, and it came out in an era that had some kind of like
it's not
horror stuff coming out in it. Like
I think
it's definitely not. It definitely kind of like accentuates all the worst aspects of all the like worst instincts that James Wan has. You know what I mean? Like,
it's just straight up. It feels like when you find out that they were kind of like, hey kid, we need another horror. Basically you're contracted to make more horror movies for us. Make one.
Yeah.
It feels like that when it's like when James Wan is at his best, right? And this movie did terribly at the box office. I mean, it made its money back. I think it was
people aren't really huge on puppet movies.
And but James Wan's instincts, right? First Saw, surprise hit, still spending sequels. Insidious, surprise haunted house story, ghost story. People loved it. Once again, the sequels was never really a hit for me, but still had its sequels. But James Wan's child, basically. I remember reading, it was like, because of what he did in Saw, he made sure when they did Insidious that there's more care to it. And same thing with The Conjuring. And then he makes big action movies. So it's interesting.
That third Conjuring movie's real bad, though.
Oh, that was rough. I think he actually didn't direct. That was the one he didn't direct.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that one was so bad.
Not good.
And you got to be really bad when I don't want to buy the Blu-ray even for cheap.
Yeah.
That's one of those movies. But so I think Dead Silence, I don't want to call it a misstep because it's a fun movie. Like you said, I'll watch it this Halloween season.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one that I had never watched. My wife had watched it, and it was kind of sitting on my Amazon wish list for a long time. That's kind of why I ended up trying to pulling the trigger on it for the show. It was seemed perfect. It was kind of from an era that is more in your wheelhouse, but something I had never seen.
Yeah,
from filmmakers we're both familiar with and stuff, who are still working or still kind of big names. I mean, shit, Lee Winnell is bigger than ever.
Lee Winnell is the real star. Since Upgrade and then The Invisible Man, and
don't think he's working on the new Wolfman, right?
That I would love. That would be great. I did not know that, but he makes sense if he would do the Wolfman. I mean,
yeah.
After what he did with,
I thought Invisible Man was great. So I hope that it'd be cool to see him do something else with that. And if that's where he is, but Upgrade's excellent. And like I said, it's cool to see him kind of get to come back. And he didn't have the meteoric rise like James Wan, where he was just he stayed steady and kept his nose to the grindstone, and now he's doing good work again.
Mm-hmm. A lot of talent to this with them, but yeah. Other than that, right? I wish this just had a better, not even a better cast involved with it.
Yeah, I think there's some stuff you could have done to tighten up the story. I think we talked about that, and I think better casting, or even just eliminating that character and going a little bit of a different route would have worked. But yeah, overall, like I said, this is one that I kind of scoffed at and kind of because me and Sarah watch a lot of horror movies together, which means we watch a lot of bad horror movies. And sometimes I give her a hard time, and I'm like, sometimes, she'll pick one. And
she was a fan.
This is one of those ones that she just watched without me because I was kind of like, and then it just been on my, kind of just outside my sphere for so long. I thought it was a good choice, and it turned out, it's totally fine. There's way worse movies out there. This is inoffensive, schlocky, and just weird enough that I think it earns its place in that niche cult. Well,
it's right there when we were joking on Twitter the other week with The Pope's Exorcist, right? Where like this is that, like or like I don't know. I'll just come and call what they are: trash studio horror movies. And I have a soft spot for almost all of them because I know what I'm getting. They're fun. They're jump scares. They're a little more than that, and you might get something interesting of a creepy moment, but that's it. Not
like I said, this one definitely has a few creepy ideas in it, and maybe not enough to carry it to being a classic, but enough to make it watchable for sure.
Not everything. I'm going to end this here. Needs to be of two camps: either your A24 horror movie or just like what we talked about. What we talked about last week, Maximum Overdrive, like the schlock. Not everything needs to be those two camps where it's like sometimes I just want a studio horror movie that's offensive in the sense of like it's pretty fucking lazy, but it worked.
Right. But it was fun. Well, and again, and I've heard people talk about this before too. It's like with horror, sometimes you just need something for teenagers to go see on the weekend.
That's what
this is 100% that.
This is like my wife.
It comes out now, just like every horror movie, every shitty horror movie that comes out a weekend that we all forget. But somebody, it's going to be their favorite, and it's going to be a movie they fucking love that gets them into horror, and they go on and see better stuff because of it, and they'll always hold a soft spot for it. And that's cool too.
I think that's how I saw this. I think it was like, oh no, that was pretty sweet. And then I discovered better things, and Absolutely. We were able to talk about it today. But anything else you want to add about Dead Silence, Brian? I think we covered, weirdly enough, with this, because it is so simplistic, and like that middle meat of it, like there isn't any really scares to highlight. I'm realizing even in the middle of
You've seen a movie like this. He goes around. He looks at microfiche. He talks to locals. He hears some. You know what it is. You know what it's like.
Yeah, it's good. Anyway, thank you for joining us all, listening to us talk about Dead Silence. You'll see us next time, whatever that may be. And you want to lead us off there, dummy?
Yeah, Joe. Thanks for having me on your program, and I can't wait to come back and tell every one of your fans to go fuck themselves.
Stay frightful.
That's terrible, Danny.
Wow. Danny, why would you? Welcome to Flyover State of Fear.